The Vatican's communication chief, layman Dr. Paolo Ruffini, made headlines this week when he continued to defend his office's use of artwork by disgraced Jesuit Marko Rupnik. Nearly every major feast day, the Vatican's official site features artwork by this once excommunicated artist. Victims are furious, and Ruffini delivered the keynote speech at the annual Catholic Media Conference in Atlanta on June 21st, and he was asked why the dicastery continues to use Rupnik's artwork on its website despite numerous allegations of sexual abuse against the Jesuit artist. Ruffino at one point had this to say: "We're not talking about abuse of minors. We're talking a story that we don't know. Who am I to judge the Rupnik stories?" End quote. Here to discuss, we are joined from Rome by art historian, author of How Catholic Art Saved the Faith, Dr. Elizabeth Lev. Liz, thanks for being here. We discussed this issue back in February, and yet the scandal continues. Your thoughts about, first, Ruffini's choice of words here, despite the known fact that the Jesuits, the order in which Rupnik is a member, expelled him last year. Who am I to judge? I mean, the Jesuits made a judgment, and someone with great power at the Vatican made a judgment and lifted his excommunication. We're talking about a guy who manipulated nuns using art to coerce them into what I'll just describe as debased profanations of the sacraments. It's diabolical. What about the alleged victims of Rupnik who've come forward in recent months, Liz? Do we owe them something? Does the Church owe them something? And should an artist and his art be immune from judgment?
Yeah, that's an awful lot there. But my first thought is this,
I know.
and it's a very, very strange thing. It's like the Vatican is having just a bad language month, right? How many missteps have we heard in just 1 month from the Holy Father himself all the way down to this situation? It's like the Vatican has just put its foot in its mouth and cannot seem to remove it. And furthermore, it seems very strange that you have a spokesman who has just taken the line of the pontificate, "Who am I to judge?" The line that was supposed to be this expression of welcomeness and openness of the church, and he's just turned it into a protective cover for a serial abuser. So I just sit there and say, how can you be a spokesman? Like, how is this happening? But I think more to the point, I think really getting down to what's happening here is that once again, this question of Marko Rupnik appears because nothing appears to be happening. And in the midst of Ruffini was his own worst enemy. In the midst of what he was saying, there were some logical statements that the church doesn't delete and cancel. That's not a good way for us to approach art. He said, he talked about Caravaggio, as we have on several occasions. He did say that there is a procedure and the procedure is happening. But unfortunately, those sensible things he said were couched in such incredible callous dismissal of the suffering of these women. How can the church say it's close to these victims of abuse when the Vatican spokesman responds to, well, wouldn't it help to get rid of the art? He says, no, that would not help them, as if he knows what these women need. Furthermore, I do not believe the Holy Father has even seen these women. So I think, again, the problem is that we keep focusing back on this art because the Vatican keeps putting it in front of us, these missiles constantly, instead of thinking about maybe a process of a conversation that would be transparent, where we could have the dicastery for culture talking about things.
Liz, we've reached a curious place when Hollywood, holds themselves to a higher standard than the Vatican. I mean, look, when the Woody Allen accusations went out, just for instance, suddenly nobody wanted to touch or distribute Woody Allen's movies. Actors won't join his casts. He kind of got the bum's rush out the door. In this case, we seem to have someone in the Vatican apparatus, and I've seen reports of a member, apparently, of Father Rupnik's community, who is a member of the Vatican communications apparatus, I guess is partly responsible for the constant push of his work in the face of not only unsuspecting faithful, but the people who feel they have been abused and the victims of Rupnik who've come forward.
I think it's deeply problematic. Dr. Ruffini explained this that these works of art that keep coming out, that keep being published and used as the Vatican as the backdrop for all of its major public displays, is because they were already in the chute, and they can't, they're just waiting for them to finish cycling out. But first of all, do you people not have any other artists? I mean, is the imagination of the Holy See limited to one man and one man alone? I mean, I believe there are quite a
Yeah.
few other Catholic artists out there that they could choose from.
You
And
think?
it's just, it's stubborn. It feels a little bit like gaslighting. And as you know, I am a big proponent of thinking twice before we take down that art. But seriously, Dr. Ruffini, in his attempt to defend the keeping of the art, he really makes the callousness, that mansplaining, really, it plays against him. So he's not helping the case. I would love to see a committee talk about this seriously in front of us and have some sort of respect for the victims of Rupnik.
Well, this is what I am vexed by, and I'll just say this: we have a synodal approach with everybody coming together and making cross arguments and counter arguments about all sorts of settled dogma, all manner of established church teaching for centuries, but something like this that could bear the synodal touch, where you could bring together artists, victims groups, have a day of conversation with the Holy Father about this. That is a great idea, Liz Lev. I hope somebody there is listening. But look, all of this brings up the issue of the separation of the artist from his or her art, which we've discussed before. Is that even possible now in the case of Marko Rupnik? At this point, with all we know, the guy's currently under investigation. Nothing's moving, but he's under investigation. He was excommunicated and then was unexcommunicated. He was expelled from his diocese and expelled by the Jesuits. Now he's apparently reincarnated to some other diocese. This all reeks of an inside deal.
It seems impossible to us. I know it seems impossible to us, especially those of us who live in the Vatican circle, those of us who be hearing about this story all the time, those of us who see the injustice of these women whose story could barely get told, and Rupnik, who keeps working, keeps being protecting. So I do understand that, the idea of this art and the man being completely connected. But at the same time, there are people, I have seen people praying in front of those works that are blissfully oblivious. And the idea is to leave the time for time to decide, not to react with our immediate rage, knee jerk. This is so wrong. What's happening? We have to get rid of the art, but we have to give time for this sort of this settling of both the man, his deeds, and his works, to be able to see it with a clearer and more lucid light. At least that's what I think.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, really, if you will, a synodal approach would allow us different voices to be heard, and at least everyone would feel like he or she had been heard at this point.
Yeah. No, it's two separate issues here. One is the justice for the wrongdoings or alleged wrongdoings of this man. The other is what to do about his artwork. And look, Pope Francis has even spoken positively about Rupnik's mosaics after the scandal was made public, which I want you to speak about the optics of that. But look, I'm going to say it. In my personal opinion, in the opinion of many people, this artwork sucks. And when you have Caravaggio and you got Michelangelo's and you got Fra Angelico's in your garage and in your attic, why would you feature this junk, Liz, in the forefront of every missal that visitors see on the website? Why this, and ignore the 2,000-year history of art patrimony that the Catholic Church is?
All right. I think I do have to tell you something, that many of Caravaggio's contemporaries said that Caravaggio's art sucks. So if you look at men like Baglioni and Bellori, they were always complaining about his art, saying he wasn't a very good artist. So Caravaggio's been leveled with the same accusation of not being a very good artist. But I mean, more to the point, I think the problem is that the works, this artwork needs time. It needs time to understand. We know that people put those works everywhere. And I was in Malta looking at one of his displays with all of my personal dislike and everything that I know and everything that I've read. But I saw in that space, in that moment, I saw in that space why someone would have commissioned an artist like that. And at the end of the day, looking at works of art like a mosaic, the more that eventually time can separate the man and what he did, and those people, all of those people, he did not put those tiles in place. That is the work of many, many people who put their love, their energy into making something that is it's luminous. It fills up the space. I don't personally care for the way he makes his shapes, but if we want to get into an art history discussion, there is an element to the simplicity of his work that makes it accessible to many people. I see it every day. I've seen it before this all broke out.
I'm out of time. We'll leave it there. And I love your charity in all of this. I would call it a little simplistic, but that not your analysis, the work. I just think it's modernism at its worst. I think it's simplistic. It looks like a child scribbled it on the wall with tiles. And they're a heck of a lot better mosaic artists. I have seen them up close with my own eyes at the Vatican and certainly all over Europe. But we will leave it there. We'll come back for another discussion. Liz Lev, thank you for the time.
Hi, Raymond. Have a great evening.